What I'm going to do now is work through an additional example for the company valuation. And I'm going to be working through question number 17 in chapter 13 about Icarus Airlines. So just to review this problem, the company is proposing going public. We've been given some estimates of its value. There's some information about management's plans. They expect to maintain debt at 30% of the company's present value. And you think that at this capital structure, the company's debt holders will demand return of 6%. That's on the debt. And stockholders will require 11%. By the way, we're going to need that information for the weighted average cost of capital. The company's forecasting next year's operating cash flow, which is depreciation plus profit after tax, and the tax rate's 40%. That cash flow will be $68 million, and there will be investment expenditure. Thereafter, meaning in the following years, operating cash flows and investment expenditures are forecasted to grow into perpetuity by 4% per year. What is the total value of Icarus? Let's begin by taking some of that information, and the first thing I'm going to do is calculate the WACC. The problem tells us that the company believes that 30% of the capital will be debt, and then the remaining 70% will be equity. It also tells us that 6% will be the rate of return on that debt, and 11% will be the cost of capital. The tax rate is 40%, and this means that the company's weighted average cost of capital, it should be 8.78%. So I'm going to put that into my valuation table. And I'm going to extend out my decimal places because I like to know that it's 8.78. The next thing that we're told is that the company is going to have operating cash flow of $68 million, and they're also going to have expenditures of $1 million. That should yield net cash flow after investments of $38 million. Then we're told that the company thereafter is going to essentially grow by 4% per year. That would be the net cash flow. So I'm moving my schedule around just a little bit to accommodate that. So I have to calculate the horizon value. So we've done essentially 1 year of detailed calculation to get the net cash flow, which is an important number for us. Then what I want to know is the per year cash flow into perpetuity. What I'm going to first do is take that 38 and I'm going to increase it by 4%. And partially that's based on what the problem states, that the last sentence, thereafter operating cash flows and expenditure forecasted to grow into perpetuity by 4% per year. So what that means is the first year of the horizon, which is year 2, the cash flows would be 4% bigger than the prior year. Now what I'm going to do is calculate the value of the perpetuity. So what I just did is the per year cash flow into perpetuity. That's step 1. Now what I'm going to do is calculate the value of the perpetuity. So the way to think about it is step 1 is the 1 year cash flow. Step 2 is the forever cash flow. And to do that, I'm going to use the equation cash flow divided by R minus G, which is the formula for the perpetuity. So I'm going to take the cash flow and I'm going to divide it by R, which is the WACC, minus G, which is the growth rate. Oops, get that equation correct. And that means that the present value of the horizon value is 828, or 827. The third thing I now have to do is calculate the present value of the cash flows, including the perpetuity. Therefore, I'm going to pull out my present value function. I'm going to calculate the present value and then I'm going to make that value positive by putting, because it's a positive cash flow. And I'm going to do the same thing for the perpetuity. I'm just going to make a slight adjustment. So the number of years, the NPER is the same as 1 year prior to the horizon value. So it's 1. And then the future value is the total value of the horizon value, the forever value. And then I'm going to make that number negative as well. And then I'm going to sum those two values together. So what I have just calculated is the total value of Icarus. Now, by the way, for those of you who are curious, if you want to calculate the equity value, what I would do is I would back out the amount of debt, which I know above that it's 30% of the total. That would be 238, which would mean that the equity value then is essentially what's left over. So remember, when you're working these valuation problems, to one, include the horizon value, and then use these 3 steps to figure out the present value of the horizon value. And as you notice in this problem, we did 1 year in detail, and then the remaining years were based on the perpetuity. You could do 3 years in detail and have year 4 and beyond the perpetuity. It could be 5 years in detail, and then it's year 6 into perpetuity. That's really just a judgment of how the organization wants to do their valuation. I'll be posting this spreadsheet as well, so you can go in and reference some of the formulas. Hopefully this will be useful as you work on your homework problems. As a reminder, those will be due on Saturday. Please check Moodle for the specific problems and the deadline.